alone in the haunted house. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the neighborhood, I found myself standing before an old, dilapidated house. My heart raced with a mix of curiosity and trepidation, fueled by the urban legends that surrounded this place. This was my chance to prove to my friends that I wasn't afraid of anything, even spending a night in the infamous haunted house. I stepped over the threshold, my flashlight cutting through the darkness like a knife. The air was heavy with the smell of decay, and the floorboards creaked beneath my feet. I couldn't help but shiver, a chill running down my spine. The stories I'd heard flooded my mind. A family had once lived here, but something terrible had happened. No one knew the exact details, but everyone agreed on one thing: this house was cursed. I decided to explore the ground floor first, my steps cautious as I moved from room to room. The furniture was covered in dusty sheets, frozen in time as if waiting for its inhabitants to return. In the living room, an old, cracked mirror caught my attention. As I gazed into it, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I spun around, my heart pounding, but the room was empty. Dismissively, I tried to convince myself that my imagination was playing tricks on me. I climbed the creaking staircase to the second floor, where the air grew even colder. A distant tapping sound echoed through the hallway, like footsteps that were just out of reach. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, and pushed open the first door. The room was small, adorned with faded wallpaper peeling off the walls. It looked like a child's bedroom, complete with a dusty, old-fashioned dollhouse on a small table. A sudden gust of wind rustled the curtains, and I felt a presence in the room with me. My flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I turned around, half expecting to see a figure standing there, but the room remained empty. My heart raced, and I rushed out, my breath shaky. With every step, the house seemed to come alive. Whispers echoed through the halls, as if the walls themselves held secrets. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that unseen eyes followed my every move. I entered another room, this one larger and more decrepit than the rest. The ceiling was partially collapsed, and moonlight filtered through the holes, casting an otherworldly glow. In the corner of the room, I spotted an old rocking chair, swaying gently as if moved by an invisible hand. My skin prickled, and a shiver ran down my spine. As I watched, frozen in fear, the chair's rocking grew more pronounced, becoming almost violent. It was as if the very essence of the house was trying to communicate with me. I stumbled back, my heart racing, and bolted down the hallway. I needed to leave, to escape the clutches of this malevolent place. But as I reached the staircase, I heard a soft, mournful melody drifting through the air. It was a lullaby, hauntingly beautiful, and it seemed to come from all directions at once. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but a morbid curiosity held me in place. I followed the sound to a room at the end of the hallway, the door slightly ajar. I pushed it open, revealing a room that was remarkably intact compared to the rest of the house. In the center of the room stood an old music box, its delicate figurine twirling to the haunting melody. I approached the music box cautiously, drawn to it against my better judgment. The melody grew louder, filling the room with an otherworldly energy. And then, the music abruptly stopped. In its place, a chilling whisper danced on the edge of my senses, as if carried by a ghostly breeze. "Stay." The voice was soft, barely audible, but it sent a jolt of terror through me. Without thinking, I turned to flee, but the door slammed shut before I could reach it. Panic surged within me as I tried to open the door, but it was as if the very wood had become solidified. Alone in the room, the walls seemed to close in around me, the air growing suffocatingly cold. Shadows twisted and contorted, forming grotesque shapes that danced on the walls. The whispers grew louder, their words incomprehensible but filled with a palpable malevolence. I was trapped, caught in a nightmare that was all too real. As the hours stretched on, the boundaries between reality and the supernatural blurred, and I found myself face to face with the lingering spirits of the house. They had been waiting for someone like me, a lost soul, to join their eternal torment. And as the first rays of dawn broke through the windows, the room fell silent. The door swung open, and I stumbled out, my body trembling. The house had released its hold on me, but the memories of that night would forever haunt my dreams. I emerged from the haunted house, a changed person. The horrors I had experienced were etched into my mind, a constant reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. The legends had been true, and I was lucky to have survived. But the whispers, the shadows, and the chilling melody would forever be etched into my memory, a reminder that some places are better left untouched and some horrors are best left unexplored. Story 2. The Whispering Silence of Midnight. The chill of the night settled over the house as I watched my family's car disappear around a bend. Home alone, I muttered to myself with a nervous chuckle. My parents were off to a weekend getaway, leaving me to fend for myself in our quiet, suburban home. I was accustomed to solitude, but this time felt different. A sense of unease crept over me, like a shadow lurking just beyond the corner of my vision. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the house took on a new personality. The familiar creaks and groans of settling walls seemed amplified, and every rustling leaf outside sent shivers down my spine. I distracted myself with a movie, trying to shake off the uneasiness that had settled in the pit of my stomach. The flickering light from the TV cast dancing shadows on the walls, making me jump at every unexpected movement. After a while, I decided it was time to retire to my bedroom. The hallway leading to my room felt unusually long, the shadows cast by the moonlight seemingly stretching and reaching out like skeletal fingers. I closed the door behind me, attempting to shut out the feeling of being watched. I climbed into bed, wrapping myself in the warmth of the covers as if they could shield me from the creeping dread. As I lay there, my eyes fixed on the ceiling, I began to hear something, a faint, almost imperceptible whispering. At first, I brushed it off as my imagination playing tricks on me, but the sound persisted, growing slightly louder. It was as if someone was whispering just beyond the edge of hearing, their words carried on a breeze that brushed against my ears. I sat up, straining my ears to catch the words. The whispers were indistinct, like a distant conversation just out of reach. My heart pounded in my chest as a sense of dread deepened. I considered turning on the lights, but a part of me hesitated, as if the darkness itself was more inviting than the source of those haunting whispers. The air in the room grew colder, and I could see my breath misting in the moonlit darkness. The whispers seemed to coalesce into something more distinct, a melody hauntingly beautiful and utterly chilling. The notes seemed to hang in the air, carrying an unspoken sadness that tugged at my heartstrings. In a trance, I got out of bed and followed the sound. It led me down the hallway, each step feeling heavier as if I was being drawn towards something beyond my control. The whispers grew louder, the melody more captivating. I reached the living room, where the moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting an eerie glow. There, in the corner of the room, was an old, dusty piano. I had never seen it before. It was as if it had materialized out of thin air. The keys beckoned me, and before I knew it, my fingers were dancing across them, playing the haunting melody that had ensnared my senses. It was as if the music was being pulled from deep within me, as if the piano itself was alive with an otherworldly energy. But as the final notes echoed through the room, the whispers transformed into a chorus of anguished voices, their cries mingling with the fading melody. My fingers froze on the keys, a sense of terror gripping me as I realized the source of the whispers, the souls trapped in this house, reaching out from beyond the veil. I stumbled back from the piano, my heart racing. The room seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, and the walls closed in around me. The air grew thick with an oppressive silence, suffocating and heavy. The temperature dropped even further, and I could see my own breath forming clouds in the air. And then, a voice, a single, clear voice, cut through the silence. "Help us," it pleaded, the words like a blade slicing through the dread that had paralyzed me. I turned, and there, in the shadows, I saw them, figures, ethereal and translucent, their eyes filled with sorrow and desperation. I wanted to run, to escape the horrors before me, but my feet were rooted to the spot. The figures drew closer, their whispers becoming more urgent, more insistent. Their stories unfolded in my mind, tragedies that had unfolded within these walls, lives cut short by inexplicable circumstances. Tears welled in my eyes as the weight of their suffering bore down on me. I could feel their pain, their longing for release from the liminal space they were trapped in. With a surge of courage, I began to speak, my voice shaky but determined. "I'll help you. I'll find a way to set you free." The figures seemed to shimmer, their expressions shifting from desperation to gratitude. The oppressive atmosphere in the room lifted, and the temperature began to rise. The air was filled with a gentle warmth, as if the souls had found solace in my words. As the first light of dawn broke through the windows, the figures faded, their presence dissipating like mist in the morning sun. The piano stood silent and still, no longer emitting its haunting melody. The whispers were gone, replaced by a profound stillness. I collapsed onto the couch, exhausted yet strangely fulfilled. The house had held its secrets for so long, its tragic history hidden in the shadows. But now, as the first birdsong of the morning filled the air, a sense of hope lingered, a belief that even in the darkest corners, there could be light, and that even the most haunted places could find redemption. Story 3. Echoes of the Forgotten. The house felt eerily silent as I locked the front door behind my family. They were off to a distant family gathering, leaving me home alone for the weekend. I was used to having the house to myself, but tonight was different. The air seemed thicker, and the faintest hint of a chill ran down my spine. Ignoring my unease, I turned on all the lights and settled down on the couch, determined to make the best of my solitude. I lost track of time while engrossed in a book. The clock on the wall ticked away, each sound magnified in the silence. Around midnight, I decided to head to bed. As I walked down the hallway, a floorboard creaked behind me. I stopped dead in my tracks, my heart racing. I listened intently, chalking it up to the old house's quirks. I was almost convinced that it was my imagination playing tricks when I heard it again, an unmistakable whisper, a soft murmur that seemed to echo through the house. My pulse quickened as I turned around, half expecting to find someone standing there. But the hallway was empty, the shadows dancing eerily in the dim light. Shaking off the unease, I retreated to my bedroom, reminding myself that it was just my mind conjuring up phantoms. As I lay in bed, surrounded by darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The quiet was oppressive, punctuated only by the distant hum of a passing car. I tried to dismiss my fears, but then came a sound that chilled me to the bone, a child's laughter, faint and distant, as if carried by the wind itself. My breath caught in my throat. I lived alone, and there were no children in my neighborhood at this hour. I strained to hear it again, my heart pounding. Silence descended once more, broken only by the rhythm of my own heartbeat. Just as I was about to dismiss the laughter as a figment of my imagination, a voice, soft and plaintive, seemed to whisper my name. Emily. The word hung in the air, the syllables elongated in a way that sent shivers down my spine. I clutched the covers tightly, scanning the room for the source of the sound. But the room remained empty, the shadows undisturbed. The voice had sounded familiar, a ghost from my past, but it was impossible. My heart raced as a memory resurfaced, my childhood friend, Lily, who had disappeared without a trace years ago. As I lay there, paralyzed by fear and uncertainty, I felt a presence in the room, a cold breath against my skin that sent goosebumps racing across my flesh. I whispered Lily's name into the darkness, half hoping for a response, half terrified of what that might entail. A soft sigh seemed to echo in response, a whisper carried on the wind. Help me, Emily. The words were laden with desperation, a plea that tugged at my heartstrings. I wanted to run, to flee from this impossible situation, but I couldn't ignore the urgency in that voice, the voice that could only belong to Lily. With a trembling breath, I sat up in bed and whispered, What happened to you, Lily? The room was filled with a heavy silence, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. And then, the shadows seemed to deepen, and a figure materialized at the foot of my bed. It was Lily, or at least a spectral form that resembled her. Her eyes held an empty sadness, and her lips moved, as if struggling to form words. I couldn't tear my gaze away from her as she recounted her last moments, her voice faint and fragmented. She had been taken, she had suffered, and her spirit had been trapped in this house, a prisoner of a past that refused to let go. Tears streamed down my face as I listened, my heart breaking for my long-lost friend. I need your help, Emily, Lily's voice wavered, her form flickering in and out of existence. You're the only one who can free me from this torment. The weight of her words settled on my shoulders, the enormity of the task she was asking me to undertake. But I couldn't ignore the pain in her eyes, the plea for release. With a resolute nod, I whispered, I'll help you, Lily. I promise. As soon as the words left my lips, the room seemed to brighten, the air becoming less oppressive. Lily's form began to fade, her expression shifting from desperation to gratitude. A faint smile touched her lips before she dissolved into the shadows. The room felt emptier once she was gone, a profound silence descending like a blanket. But this time, the silence held a different quality, not the suffocating stillness of before, but a calm serenity. I closed my eyes, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't expected. The sun's first rays peeked through my curtains, signaling the arrival of a new day. I had spent the night with a ghost, helping her find peace. As I stepped out of bed, I felt a weight lifted from my shoulders, a sense of fulfillment that I hadn't experienced before. Over the following weeks, the house felt lighter, as if the darkness that had lingered for so long had finally dissipated. I could almost sense Lily's presence, a gentle whisper in the wind, a fleeting touch of gratitude. I knew she was finally at peace. I often think about that night, about the encounter that changed my perspective on life and death. The house that had once seemed haunted had become a place of closure, a space where a long-forgotten soul had found release. And in that experience, I had found a sense of purpose and a connection to a world beyond our own, a world of echoes and whispers, where the forgotten could finally be heard. Story 4. The Reflection in the Mirror. The house always felt different when I was home alone. The silence seemed to stretch endlessly, and even the familiar creaks and groans of the old building took on an eerie quality. This time, my family had gone on a last-minute weekend getaway, leaving me alone with the house's secrets. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I settled in on the couch, surrounded by the warm glow of lamps. The TV provided a comforting distraction, but the shadows that danced on the walls seemed to take on a life of their own. I tried to ignore the unease that crept up my spine, chalking it up to my overactive imagination. After a while, I decided to take a break and wandered into the kitchen for a snack. The flickering candlelight on the dining table cast elongated shadows that seemed to reach out towards me. I forced myself to laugh at my own jittery nerves and grabbed a bag of chips from the pantry. As I made my way back to the living room, I caught a glimpse of movement in the hallway mirror. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I turned, half expecting to find someone there, but the hallway was empty. My reflection stared back at me, but something about it seemed off. My pulse quickened as I realized that my reflection was not mimicking my movements. It was smiling. My breath caught in my throat as I stepped closer to the mirror, my heart racing. The reflection continued to smile, its eyes dark and malevolent. I tried to step back, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Panic surged within me as I watched the reflection's grin widen. And then, it spoke, a voice that seemed to crawl from the depths of the mirror itself. "Don't be afraid," it cooed, the words dripping with a sickening sweetness. My mouth went dry, and a cold sweat broke out on my brow. "Who are you?" I managed to choke out, my voice trembling. The reflection's grin twisted into a malicious smirk. "I am you, the part of you that you hide from the world. The darkness that dwells within." I wanted to look away, to run, but my eyes remained locked with the reflection's gaze. It was as if I was being drawn into its malevolent orbit, unable to escape. The room grew colder, the air thick with an oppressive energy. Shadows seemed to gather around the mirror, their shapes contorting into grotesque forms. The reflection's smile faded, replaced by an expression of hunger, of craving. "Let me out," it hissed, its voice a venomous whisper. "I've been trapped for so long. It's time for me to experience the world." Fear surged through me, a primal instinct that overpowered my paralysis. With a surge of adrenaline, I tore my gaze away from the mirror and stumbled backward. The cold grip on my feet released, and I bolted from the room, my heart pounding in my chest. I locked myself in the bathroom, my breath ragged, my mind racing. The mirror in there seemed ordinary, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me, that something lurked just beyond its surface. I splashed water on my face, trying to shake off the terror that threatened to consume me. As I looked up into the mirror, my own reflection seemed to waver, its features twisting and distorting. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. This couldn't be happening. I couldn't be trapped in a nightmare like this. With a surge of determination, I grabbed a towel and threw it over the mirror, blocking my reflection from view. The room seemed to sigh with relief, the oppressive energy lifting slightly. I sank to the floor, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Hours passed as I huddled in the bathroom, the fear slowly giving way to exhaustion. The silence of the house was broken only by the distant sound of a clock ticking. I debated calling someone for help, but what would I say? Who would believe the bizarre and terrifying ordeal I had experienced? As dawn approached, I mustered the courage to uncover the mirror, half expecting the malevolent reflection to be waiting. But the mirror was empty, reflecting only the tiled wall behind me. The tension in the room seemed to ease, the shadows receding. I cautiously left the bathroom, my senses on high alert. The house felt different, as if a storm had passed through and left behind an uneasy calm. I checked every mirror in the house, half expecting a glimpse of that twisted reflection, but they all seemed normal. With the first rays of sunlight streaming through the windows, I felt a sense of relief, as if the darkness had been chased away by the dawn. I ventured outside, letting the warmth of the sun wash over me. The fresh air cleared my head, and I began to wonder if the horrors of the night had all been a fevered dream. But as I turned back to look at the house, a chill ran down my spine. In the upstairs window, I saw a figure, a silhouette with dark, malevolent eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. My breath caught, and I stumbled back, unable to tear my gaze away. The figure raised a hand, its fingers pressing against the glass of the window, as if trying to reach out to me. And then, with a suddenness that set my heart racing, it vanished, leaving behind nothing but an empty room. The echoes of that night lingered, a haunting reminder that some horrors cannot be explained or understood. The house held its secrets, its malevolent reflection a testament to the darkness that can dwell within us all. And as I stood outside, the sunlight warming my skin, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been awakened, something that would forever cast a shadow over my reality.